Hi, everybody, and good afternoon. Want to welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for the for the psychology of returning to work activity and play, brought to you by MRPA, featuring Dr. Joel Fish. Before we get started, I'd like to cover some housekeeping information. Please keep your videos on if you're able to, and keep your microphones muted unless Dr. Joel says otherwise. Additionally, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We will be checking the chat and monitoring that, so please put all questions in the chat. And now for a quick introduction to our speaker. Dr. Joel Fish is a licensed psychologist and nationally recognized expert in sports psychology who has worked in the field for over 30 years. He is a 16-time speaker at the NRPA National Conference and speaks at many state parks and recreation conferences. He has worked extensively with athletes of all ages and skills, from sports through Olympic and professional ranks. Dr. Joel has been a sports psychologist consultant for the Philadelphia 76ers, Philadelphia Flyers, and the Philadelphia Phillies organization, USA Women's National Field Hockey Team, and the US National Women's Soccer Team. Wow. Dr. Fish has also served as a sports psychology consultant for St. John's Universities, the University of Pennsylvania, Temple University, and numerous other universities. Dr. Fish has also worked with numerous businesses and organizations on topics of leadership, peak performance, sustaining motivation, and team building. Dr. Fish has been frequently quoted in the Philadelphia national media, having featured numerous times on ABC, CNN, ESPN, Fox, HBO, and NBC. In addition to that, he has been featured on television programs such as NBC's Today Show, HBO's Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, ESPN Sports Center, and Outside the Lines. He is currently the director for the Center of Sports Psychology in Philadelphia, where he works with all athletes of all ages and skill sets. He is the author of a popular youth sports book, 101 Ways to Be a Terrific Sports Parent. Dr. Fish received his BA from Clark University and master's from Temple University, and a PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Everyone, welcome Dr. Joel Fish.
Thank you, Ovan. I really appreciate that. And it's a pleasure to be with you. One thing that you didn't put on that resume is that I grew up in the park and rec system, just my own self in terms of sport and fitness and recreation. My kids have all been involved here in the Philadelphia area. So as I speak with you, to me, that's a really important credential. I just appreciate the work that you do. I've benefited from it myself. My family has. And I have had a chance, again, to share, speak at these kind of park and rec associations statewide. Been at the Maryland RPA many times. Hope to be able to return in April. And as you said, Ovan, I've been at the National Congress on many occasions. So I want to thank you. I want to thank Adrian. I want to thank Sarah, who are on the Zoom now, Chuck, Sean, everybody that made it possible for me to be here. As we talk about the psychology, everything that I'm going to talk to you about as it relates to that resume you gave has to do with this, which has to do with the psychology of the mental part of what we do. Confidence, composure, concentration, communication, teamwork. And my goals are, with your help today, I want to make this as interactive as possible. A, bring up to date on what psychology has to say about the psychology of return to work, activity, play. If we look at the last 20 months, you don't need me to come in and tell you what a transition, what a disruption we've had, and we're not out of the woods yet. I would suggest the next 3, 6, 12 months, we are continuing to be in uncharted territory in terms of programming, in terms of implementation, capacity, vaccine mandates, mask mandates. And I'm very aware that people on this call may have a variety of different roles. So my goal is today, A, bringing up to date on what psychology has to say about return to. That could be COVID that we're dealing with uncertainty. All the societal issues we're dealing with since George Floyd and all the cultural changes we're going through, the election, all that I believe we're still working out in the next 3, 6, 12 months are going to continue to be complicated around all those return to. my goal is that this give you something to think about both at the personal development level and at the professional development level. I'm very aware that most of my conversation with you will be about in your professional role. But when we talk about return to, some of you live alone, some of you may have elderly parents, some of you may have children, some of you may have significant relationships, and where we're at in that transition, balancing personal and professional, to me is a really important part of the psychology of return to that I would like to address. See, I'd like you to think about a situation that's really challenging to you mentally, if you will. Maybe it's dealing with a certain personality type. I know we're going through all kinds of budgetary issues. I know staffing is a real major issue for many of us now. Workload, like what does that look like? Like we're valuing parks, but some people don't get the recognition. The people who are taking care of our ball fields, the grass. Like, is there a specific issue that for you personally and professionally is challenging? What is it? That might be for yourself, if you're a manager, if it's your supervisor. Like, what's a specific issue that's challenging for you as it goes to, as it speaks to return to activity, play, work? Because I would like you to walk out of this presentation with some ideas, strategies, techniques, some how-tos that you can apply to that challenging situation. And a lot of what we talk about today is going to be, I'm sure, reinforcing certain things that you're already doing, because we're really good at what we do. And so I'm hoping that if we just reinforce some of that, it gives you a shot in the arm to keep going, to keep doing what you're doing. But maybe through our conversation together, and I do hope it's together, we do come out of here with some how-to, some ideas, strategy, techniques that we can apply to a challenging situation. I want this to have some meat and potatoes for you. I want it to have some applicability for you. And finally, hopefully you learn more about yourself and somebody else on this Zoom, because we're going to talk about motivation. What motivates me may be very different than what motivates you, but everything I'd like to talk about today comes from that psychology angle. Questions, comments, thoughts? And I'd like to use the size of the group. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. If you want to unmute, please do, but I'm going to certainly periodically build in some time for questions and thoughts. So Sarah, if you can help me out with the PowerPoint, if you will, just to set the table for some of the things I'd like to talk about. If you could put up the PowerPoint, please. And I'll get a copy of this PowerPoint to everybody, so please feel free just to tune in. Just to define some terms, if we talk about, next slide, please, Sarah, performance psychology and the psychology of return performance are some of the mental skills. This part here, related to confidence and composure and concentration, communication, teamwork. Some of those skills might be positive self-talk, relaxation, focusing, if you will. The performance part of the psychology part of what we talk about today is anything in your personal life that can be impacting upon your academic, your work experience, clinical performance, decision-making, anything that's in your personal life. So we're going to talk a lot about sport and performance psychology. I just want to make sure we're defining terms. And some of the areas we should hit on today, if you could go to the next slide, Sarah, please. If I do my job right, I'm going to be going through some of these assumptions here and should hit on a variety of terms as it relates to that mental part. So before I just get some feedback from you, in preparing for you in terms of the psychology of return to work, activity, play, I am basing my presentation today on a couple of assumptions. And please let me know whether these assumptions make sense for you or resonate for you. I'm very aware every department has its own culture, every role has its own unique challenges, but some assumptions that I think would go across the board for everybody on the Zoom. And everything I say, I'd really like you to be able to think of it in terms of how it applies to you and the department in which you're part of, the county in which you're part of. Individual differences. I cannot come in here and paint everybody with the same brush when we talk about change and transition, the psychology of return to. Just looking at some of your faces on the Zoom, different backgrounds, different ages, different experiences. One thing we have in common is all of us have shown a tremendous ability to adapt and adjust over the last 20 months. Let's trust that. Trust that. Because as we move forward, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's coming down the pike, but that confidence in terms of, I've done this before, I can do it again. I can continue to adapt and adjust. To me, is an important mindset that I want to put out there as an assumption. There are personal and professional stressors that each of us is going through. Can't paint everybody with the same brush. I mentioned some of those personal stressors before. Some of you have families, some of you live alone, some of you have elderly parents. I hope it's not true. Some of you may know someone who's been affected by COVID, all the societal changes that we're going through, as well as professional stressors around staffing, around budget, about roles, about capacities, and what does our county policies look like? Vaccination policies, mask policies. All of those are stressors, challenges. What's your morale look like? Morale has to do with mood. Talked to someone, could have been on this Zoom. She said, when I signed up for my park and rec organization a year ago, I would have ran through a wall for that group. Now I feel like I'm starting to show up physically, but mentally I'm someplace else. I'm starting to punch the clock. Can you relate to that? Because sometimes stressors and challenges can tarnish our motivation. And I love being part of National Rec and Park Association, Maryland Rec and Park Association, because I really so impressed by the enthusiasm and the creativity and the well-intentionedness of everybody on this Zoom. But human nature being what it is, someone else said to me who could be on the Zoom, sometimes I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall and it's starting to hurt. So my response is, I'm just not banging my head against the wall anymore. And that's where we start going through the motions, if you will, and our motivation again gets tarnished. But where is your morale at this point? Your group's morale at this point? And without sounding cliched, the last 20 months and moving forward will present us with some opportunities, personally and professionally. Maybe some of us at the personal level have developed more patience, listening, slowing down like I'm doing with you right now. Maybe it's provided us personal opportunities to try new hobbies, try mindfulness, yoga. Maybe professionally, there have been opportunities to connect with people in a different way, reach out. Maybe reach out to somebody we wouldn't have reached out to. But moving forward, are there opportunities for you to grow personally and professionally? Take on new responsibilities. Learn to communicate with different personality types. How are we dealing with our parents, our boards? Like, are there opportunities without sounding cliche? Because what we do know is stress is cumulative. If we would have had this talk 20 months ago, personally and professionally, our stress levels may have been at a different place. But now, 20 months in, I'm using that as a general starting point. Still complicated the next 3, 6, 12 months. Stress is cumulative. In psychology, they say stress is like a snowball going down a hill. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. What checks and balances have you learned or do you utilize to stop that snowball from going down a hill? What's balance look like in terms of your personal and professional life? Because many of us need to, at this stage of the societal change, pandemic, return to, maybe we have to tweak the formula a little bit. Intellectually, we all know it's important to practice what we preach. Eat properly, sleep properly, get exercise, but are we doing it? Are we spending time with those significant relationships in our lives? Even though we always have something we could still do at work. What does balance look like? Because at this stage here, and returning to work, activity, for us to have a balance and maybe tweak the formula to address the different needs we have, to me is a really important part of where we're at in all the change and transition we're going through. I am very aware about finding and retaining staff being a challenge. You were overworked before, you might be doubly overworked now. And how do we, again, at that personal, professional level, advocate for ourselves when we need to, say no if we have to. Like, what's a mountain issue? This is something we're compelled to just deal with. Sometimes we just have to do it. What's a molehill issue? These are things in terms of the priorities we can leave to the next day, or sometimes let stuff go one ear, out the other ear, roll off our back. But I'm very, very aware that our finding and retaining staff and how the impact of that on your workload becomes very, very important. If you're like a lot of the groups I've been part of, some of your staff are more process oriented. You love to have meetings like we're having right now. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what we can do better. Let's build on our strengths, set goals for how to move and how to improve. And there's others on your staff, and I get this way myself too. They're more task oriented. Enough talking, just tell me what to do. Like, give me some basic do's and don'ts. Give me some direction. Where are you on that continuum? Is it helpful for you to talk about it and get stuff out rather than keep it in? Or are you tired of talking? Just give me the guidelines and I'll implement it. At this stage of the pandemic, and this may be true for you, this may be true with some of our colleagues, because stress has been building, cumulative, Many of us have developed some very healthy coping mechanisms to deal with anxiety, stress, uncertainty, morale. I'd like to feel that talking about it like we are today is a healthy coping mechanism. What would you do? This is what I do. I do believe there's value in getting it out rather than keeping it in. Maybe you have developed some other coping mechanisms, exercise, eating properly, nutrition, mindfulness. And at the back of this PowerPoint, there's a variety of different apps out there that we can use to learn how to just slow down, be more in control of our emotions rather than our emotions being in control of us. And human nature being what it is. Some of us have dealt with a lot of the cumulative stress by what I would call unhealthy coping mechanisms, putting a Band-Aid on it. So many of us, as well-intentioned as we are, we're someone we know, we're someone at home, eating too much, sleeping too much, drinking too much, just not treating ourselves well, not treating other people well. And I don't say that in any kind of judgmental way, but I need you, colleague, teammate, you need me. I might be the last one to realize I'm walking into the office. Maybe not literally with my head down, but that's inside, that's the way I feel. I need you to come up to me. What's going on? Can I help you? Anything I can do? I might have a blind spot. Everybody in the office is saying, what's going on with him? What's going on with her? But we need to be talking to each other. Great teams celebrate together. Great teams also learn to give each other feedback, during adversity. So I have a couple more assumptions, but let me just stop here and just, if someone can give me feedback, if I'm on target, if I'm off target, any of these assumptions particularly resonate with you, or the group that you're part of. There are others that I should be having on this list right now. Every group's different, every person's different, and I just want to make sure that what I'm saying really matches your experience. Anybody just willing through the chat or willing to unmute and just give me some feedback whether I'm on target or not. Otherwise, I'll assume so and I'll just keep going.
I think you're definitely on target. Just as far as the things that we do on the day to day that we may not notice. And like you said, stress is it is like a snowball. So kind of what are you doing to kind of stop that? Kind of ground yourself in the moment. Figure out what's important, and then kind of just coming up with a plan. But I feel like everything that you've talked about so far is things that everyone is all dealing with in some type of capacity.
I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your first name? I'm sorry.
Chanel.
Chanel, any particular stress, if you don't mind sharing, that you're aware has been kind of snowballing? Is it?
For me, it's kind of just I've been working the entire pandemic. So there hasn't been any work from home. There hasn't been kind of like any just really like downtime. So I actually just started this job as a recreation program manager with Charles County government. So I wanted to, just take this training to kind of, get a fresh start. This is a new opportunity for me. So some strategies or techniques that I can implement, that can help myself and then also help my staff as well.
I appreciate that, Chanel. And just to bounce off what you're saying is, in my opinion, stress isn't the enemy. Anxiety is not the enemy. It's not going away. It's just learning how to manage it, cope with it. And here I'll ask you all to trust me. I could show you documentation up to the ceiling. 3 or 5% is what we call in psychology the mental edge. If we can learn how to manage our stress 3 or 5%, we're going to feel better and we're going to perform better with a clearer mind. So the goal here isn't to rewire everybody's personality. It's just giving you time to reflect on why I really appreciate MRPA giving me this time to talk with you. Like, what are my methods to manage my stress, to cope with it 3 or 5% better? So thank you, Chanel. Now, anybody else just want to just chip in? On target, off target? I appreciate someone saying that I'm on target. Yes, please.
So I agree with Janelle. I think it's definitely been, that stressor of the snowball and it just gets bigger and bigger. But I did like that term, the molehill, or
mountain.
How big the mountain, like how big is my stressor? Like, can I get over it if I just stand back, reflect? Okay, I can do this. It's only going to take me a day, as opposed to the mountain, which seems overwhelming, and you may need help to get up that mountain.
No, I appreciate that. How do we prioritize that mountain issue? This is a major issue that I am compelled to address. The molehill issues really contribute to that snowball going down here. Those are the irritants. In psychology, we always talk about no problem, irritant, problem, red flag, emergency. And our ability to sort of assess a situation, no problem, irritant, problem, red flag, emergency, all easier said than done, especially day after day after day, I do think is really important towards us applying the energy that we have in those areas where it's most needed. 3 or 5%, 3 or 5%. So I appreciate you recognizing that term there, and that maybe that's one of the takeaways you have from our meeting here. Let me just assess, what are the mountain issues? What are the molehill issues? And through that assessment process, or just taking some time to assess and reflect, which is why I really appreciate us carving out an hour today. Maybe we tweak the formula just a little bit. Sarah, could you go on to the next slide, please? Again, just a couple of other assumptions. I'm very aware that we're at different stages of the career. Chanel, it sounds like you just started a new position, if I understood you correctly. Others of us have been at this for a while. So where are we in our career, I would suggest, has implications for how we deal with the challenges and the stressors and the morale issues and the opportunities. So where are you in terms of trying to build a career versus sustaining a career versus just trying to, if you will, end our careers or moving towards that phase of our career? Because I think all these things have an impact on what do we feel and what do we think. In psychology, we're always trying to understand, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? How is it impacting on my performance? For those who get into the field for social reasons, that's been so disrupted. Some of you I know are at different capacities. Some of you are in person, some of you are still virtual, some of your activities, but the social needs that we have, psychology, we're always talking about needs, social needs, which is what many of us brings us into this field. Like, are they being satisfied? How? Can we be a little more creative? Even tweaking that formula about reaching out to different people, which is so important, because I would suggest at this stage, we have our informal networks. Oftentimes within a group, there's somebody, for lack of a better word, who may be an outlier, not in the mix. But maybe one of the takeaways from this talk is, haven't spoken to so-and-so for a while. Let me check in and see how he's doing. Let me check in, see how she's doing, because our social networks at this stage, 20 months in, I'm using that as a starting point, can sometimes start to get a little, if you will, habitual. And so what are the habits that we can revisit and tweak a little bit that meet some of our social needs, our team needs, our culture needs? Change isn't easy. Change isn't easy. Some of you are being asked to do more. Some of you are being asked to do different things. Some of you are, just going through other personal changes. You may have kids and still making decisions about kids and childcare and this and that. But it's not business as usual, that's for sure. So welcome to the club. Some of us are wired to just roll with change more than others, but sometimes it may be just understanding of ourselves and others. There are learning curves going on here. There are growing pains as we learn to do things a different way, as we learn to develop new habits, shake up the mix, get outside our comfort zones. So where are you in that dimension? Let's have confidence that our grit, our resiliency, our experience is going to help us. I do not have a crystal ball. We could try to script 50 things that might happen in the next 3, 6, 12 months, and maybe the 51st thing will happen. But from a mindset perspective, I've done it before, I can do it again. To me, it's just a really important mindset when we're communicating with one another, and we just might not have all the answers. Let's win today. Let's win today. We'll cross tomorrow's bridge when we get to it. I am finding in my work that the what ifs are really a key driver of anxiety and stress. What if COVID gets worse? What if we have to make some more budget cuts? What if our staffing? I would never say to any of you, don't get anxious, don't get worried, don't say the what ifs. But if you do, like, what's the response to that mentally? Yeah, but what if COVID? Let's win the day. But what if? I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But what if? Trust myself, trust my preparation. And I'm trying to say with what in psychology we call the friendly voice. Just saying the same things to ourselves we'd say to somebody else. In this field, I find everybody's basically great in talking to other people, Hey, don't worry about it. Shake it off. It's okay. Figure it out. We'll find a way. That's who we are. That's what we do. But sometimes we don't talk to ourselves in the same way. So maybe one of our takeaways from today is what we call that friendly voice. Just saying the same things to ourselves we would say we'd say to somebody else, and just be mindful of the what ifs and how they can drive our anxiety and how they can drive our stress. We have to find a way to maintain hope and optimism is part of our formula to cope moving forward, because hope and optimism are an important part of group motivation. When we lose hope in any kind of optimism, it tarnishes our motivation. And some of that is an attitude. I'm not sugarcoating anything any of us are going through. But sometimes it's an attitude. As I was preparing for you today, I was listening to the weather forecast. I'm in Philadelphia right now. Today's supposed to be partly cloudy. Tomorrow's supposed to be partly sunny. And Thursday's supposed to be partly cloudy. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what's the difference between partly cloudy and partly sunny? And a lot of times it's, do we see the cup half full or do we see the cup half empty? It is a bit of an attitude. And where are you on that dimension? And where are you towards being able to see the cup half full? And if not, like, what's interfering with your ability to do that? We've tried this before, nothing's going to change. I get it. And how can we be honest and authentic with ourselves, yet maintain hope and optimism? How can we help each other with this? And then my last assumption, when I think about the people on this video, the Zoom, but think about your department, think about your county, think about your program. Team, we're all in this together. Like, I think when the first pandemic first hit, like, there was a sense we're all in this together. Healthcare workers, park and rec, first responders, if you will. At this phase of return to work, return to activity, if you'll notice, I put that up there with a couple different pieces of grammar. And this might be something you talk about with your groups, in your counties, in your office, in your families. We're all in this together. Yeah, that's a statement. Sure, we are. We're dependent on each other in some ways. We're all in this together. Well, maybe we are, but maybe we're not. Maybe my personal agenda is really most important to me now rather than my collective agenda. That's that me versus we type thing. Maybe we're not on this together. Maybe now it's in where you're working, it's everyone for themselves. Let me just survival mode, because we're really not in this together. The pie, the budget's only so much, and I'm going to go get it. And many of us are in organizations where it's almost like a zero-sum game. If I win, you lose. If you lose, if you win, I lose. And what kind of group are you in? And hope, optimism, what would it look like? Maybe just 3 or 5%. If we were all in this together, exclamation point, like, what would the actions and behaviors be for that? What would our standard be? We have such pride in this field. So I love being connected to Recreation Park. There's a lot of pride. There's a lot of idealism. There's a lot of enthusiasm. Like, what would it look like in the midst of all these changes, uncertainties, return to work, activity? If we still would have that attitude of, wow, let's control what we can, let go what we can't. Let's set goals, objectives. Let's be all in, if you will. And that's, to me, what the exclamation point is. So let me just stop again. Just a couple of other assumptions that I had, as I did before. Am I on target, off target? Are these assumptions too Pollyannish? Thumbs up if I am. Just look at the chat. Any other feedback you can give me? Good. Appreciate that. Any other comments? And then we'll just move on. So
I think I did have one other comment.
Yes,
just as far as just controlling what we can and letting go of what we can. And then it's kind of like setting goals and objectives. I'm real big on just kind of like trying to stay, in the present and, stay grounded and just kind of being grateful for like the little things. And that has helped tremendously, just as far as the day to day, not even just dealing with work, but just with everything that's going on. And then, like when you bring up the what ifs and things like that, when you're bringing up the what ifs, you're kind of not living in the present or just recognizing that, what is going well for you right now. So kind of just focusing more on the positives versus the negatives or what could go wrong.
yeah, those what ifs, and being more mindful, Chanel, is what I hear you saying about focusing on the positives, but I just have to comment on what you were saying about those little things and the gratitude piece. And intellectually, I think we kind of understand that, but so it's hard to practice sometimes day to day. I remember I was dealing with someone, could have been on the Zoom too, is to develop a new habit of how to do that. At the end of the day, when he was evaluating his performance that day, his day, he'd always start with writing down 3 things he did well, then setting new goals for how to improve. I remember I was working with an Olympic swimmer. Long story short, so I started working with him in, gosh, 88. He wins a gold medal. And I was watching it on TV. There's some people there, and he doesn't look very happy. This is before I started working with him. And like they do now, somebody sticks a microphone in his jaw and says, you know, you just won the gold medal. How do you feel? And he said, well, I don't feel so great. Why? Because I came to the Olympics with 2 goals in mind. I wanted to win the gold medal. I wanted to smash the world record. I won the gold medal, but I didn't smash the world record. So I think I failed. Well, you don't have to be Freud or a great sports psychologist to realize there's something off here. This guy had every reason to be like this. When I met him, his self-confidence was like this, shrunken, burned out, just about to quit. And between us, he was drinking way too much. His out of work life was really out of control. And long story short, and I hope this has relevance to what you were saying, Chanel, and everybody else, in my work with him, from day one in the pool, we gave him 5 or 6 different objectives, goals for how to define a good day. Were you healthy today? Well, of course I have to be healthy. Yeah, of course I'm healthy today. You know, stop. Show some gratitude for that. You're doing something that you like. You're with people that you enjoy. That's part of a good day. Did you give your best effort? Well, of course I have to have my game face on. You know, just stop, reflect. You know when you give your best effort and when you don't. Grade yourself an A for effort for the day. That's part of a good day. Did you learn something today that's going to make you a better person, a better swimmer? That's part of a good day. Were you a good teammate? You gave something to somebody else. You received something from somebody else. That was part of a good day. Rate yourself A for that. For this guy, did you stop and just smell the roses a little bit? For him, did he smile once or twice in the course of a workout? Because he was so busy trying to smash the world record, having that narrow definition of success. He just wasn't smelling the roses. So once or twice, swimmer, let me see a smile. If so, that's part of a good day. Grade yourself that way. And we did look at his results. I understand you're all accountable. We have to produce. There's efficiency, productivity. But if my story makes sense to you with my swimmer, we just developed 5 or 6 objectives for how to define a good day. Things that he could control. 92, he swam faster than he ever did before. He came in, won a bronze medal. 2 people swam faster than he did. But I'm smiling because I saw him about 6 months ago. That's where the story's coming from. He said, Joe, I'm still swimming. And it might even break that world record in a roundabout way. There's something called the Senior Olympics. Maybe I'm going to join that. And my drinking's way under control. But what he said, it wasn't just me. There were a number of people who worked on what we call in psychology multiple goals to define a good day. He said, I just learned how to broaden my definition of what a good day was, rather than it being so narrow, smashing the world record. And I see myself swimming recreationally for as long as I can. So multiple goals, controlling what we can, defining success along a couple different dimensions. Maybe that's your takeaway from this particular meeting. Questions, comments, thoughts? Somebody else in that chat said it's just easier to talk to somebody else than it is to ourselves. That's true in this field. I know that. And yeah, it's human nature. Sometimes it's easier to talk to somebody else, but I do believe we can get better at, what would I say to somebody else? Let me say it to myself. Don't worry about it. Shake it off. It's okay. Yeah, but yet, what if? Trust myself. What if? Trust my preparation. Maybe that becomes the takeaway. When evaluating what I do, starting out with what I did well, then setting new goals for how to improve. Let's go on to the next slide, if I can. Sarah. So we're already down this road. Step 1, in terms of a game plan for change, transition, the psychology of return to work activity. We're already identifying our own attitudes about change, transition. I cannot paint everybody with the same brush here. Can't do it. We all have different experiences. We're beginning to identify some takeaways. Step 2, can you identify some specific work situations that are really challenging for you? in terms of keeping that snowball from going down the hill. Anxiety, stress, change, transition. And we're working towards a game plan, because I really want you to come out of here, as I said, with some ideas that double down on certain things that you're already doing. But with some of these takeaways I'm trying to identify, maybe give you a new approach. 3 or 5% is what we call the mental edge. One more just exercise, if you will, for step one, identifying your own attitudes, because as I was preparing for you, just trying to take a look nationally at what some trends are out there. So could we have the next slide there, please, Sarah? No right or wrong answers, I promise you, but this is about that step one. Just any change in psychology always starts with what we feel and what we think. So can you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on a couple of these dimensions here? Low is on this low end, 10's on the high end. Are you just calm by nature, chill, as my kids would say? That's just your nature. That's on the low end. Are you more just high strung by nature? Tap your foot all the time, just get a little antsy, that's a 10. Are you more emotional? Everybody knows how you feel. You wear emotions on your sleeves. Or are you a good poker player? Outwardly, you look cool and calm, but inside, stomach in knots, sweaty palms. Similarly to that, are you more of an internalizer? Everything in the last 18 months, however long you've been doing this job, you just keep inside. And frustration, anger, the feelings we have to really watch, because if we just stuff them all inside, can be building. On October 26th, you might already be near the danger point, okay? Because when we stuff in feelings, particularly frustration, anger, they're going to seep out in some way, shape, or form. Or you're an externalizer, no filter. You feel it, you say it. Sometimes we need to learn how to filter. Are you more flexible? Go with the flow. You can roll easier. Or are you just more organized, structured? Change is hard for you because it goes outside the lines, if you will. Conservative, rule follower. Risk taker, personal life. Anybody been bungee jumping? To use that as an example. I have not. Got up to that edge, couldn't do it. Are you a planner? If I came into your office right now, are all your papers in a nice, neat little stack? Or if you came into my office here, you're more spontaneous. I know where everything is, but somebody else may not know where it is. And finally, particularly in this field, are you someone who strives for perfection versus a perfectionist? Striving for perfection would mean if you made a mistake this morning, said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, you've already forgotten it. You've moved on. You're going to sleep really well at night. A perfectionist is you could do 99 things right in the course of the day. If you do one thing wrong, you're going to lay awake at night thinking about how the heck did I do that? Where are you in this dimension? Why? Particularly in that striving for perfection work. Because in my work with organizations like yourself, state RPA, no matter what our personality types are, no matter what they are, we are going to be challenged by return to work, return to activity, return to play. But to assess where we are able to adapt and adjust easier than others, I think is really, really important. Like what pushes our buttons? Who does? Why? Where do we need to set as a goal? Because we can change. We can change. I don't believe we change. Our basic personalities, we're wired a certain way. You don't change a dog into a cat, but we can bump ourselves up or lower ourselves down on the scale. Where do you want to build on? We always want to build on our strengths. Maybe we walk out of this meeting today with an air, I just need to be a little more chill. Slow down. Take that deep breath. I'm going to relax my body language with you. I'm going to lower the pace of my speech. I'm going to lower the tone of my voice. Because when we slow down, heartbeat slows down, blood pressure slows down, blood rate slows down. But a lot of us, when things aren't going well, we don't bear down. Slow down, excuse me. Because we have these messages. I got to bear down, try harder, try harder. Sometimes we do, 9 out of 10 times in my work with RPAs. It's about gathering oneself, reflection, buying ourselves a moment, perspective, voice of reason, and watching out for the same trait in psychology. Every trait in psychology we say is a package deal. We are so good at what we do because we have high standards, a lot of pride. But if we don't learn in that striving for perfection to let go of a mistake, move on, develop an attitude of how can I learn, how can I improve, the same trait that makes us so good can be eating us up right now and leads to burnout, if you will. So maybe your takeaway from this is just learning some strategies to assess what I'm doing well, then set new goals for how to improve. What would I say to somebody else? Let me say it to myself. How can I really operate out of a model of something went well? Yay. What can I learn from it? How can I improve from it? Something doesn't go well? Darn. How can I learn from it? How can I improve from it? Questions, comments, thoughts?
I mean, my comment is just, wow. Oh, no, go ahead, Carla. Carla, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Fish. Really happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so definitely something that I've noticed is obviously with the return to work, it's been difficult for everybody, and it really didn't seem that hard until we were thrown into it. And so something that I've done is really been intentional with being healthy both mentally and physically. And that means kind of identifying these work triggers. And something that I did about 2.5 weeks ago was sit down and say, okay, let me talk to a colleague, explain what I'm trying to do so that if I miss something, they're there to kind of tap me out and say, hey, listen, you kind of reacted when this happened. However, I didn't even need their help because I was able to identify a trigger with, dealing with certain levels of management where feeling as though I'm being dismissed for a concern was immediately a trigger. However, I was able to identify it. And then what I was able to do was understanding that the reason why this person was dismissing me was because they really did not know how to help me at that moment. And so instead of being angry and just kind of being frustrated, I just kind of let it go. And I said, well, okay, we'll get to it when we get to it. And that was it.
Well, thank you, Carla. In a couple words, you're saying really leap out at me, intentional. I do believe, without putting our behavior under a microscope, if we can try to stay one step ahead, be a little more proactive, and just that self-awareness of those triggers, dismiss, powerful word, you're able now to perhaps, work in progress, I would suggest, takes practice for these things, stay one step ahead of it and try to understand situations and nip it in the bud, if you will. Where in psychology, we always talk about, try to come up with 3 reasons why somebody acts the way they do. And if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're learning is this person may not know the kind of feedback to give me. That maybe explains why they're acting or looking at me in a certain way. But I like the intentionality of it. I like the purposefulness of it. I like just trying to be mindful without putting your behavior under a microscope of what triggers, what buttons get pushed within me, why? Because I think when our self-awareness increases on that, we're better able to pick it up sooner rather than later. Or if we start going down that road of frustration and anger, we're able to nip it in the bud just a little bit quicker. And I know I'm repeating myself, but 3 or 5% better, quicker, will feel better. It doesn't have that same effect of the snowball going down the hill. So thank you, Carla. I appreciate that. Any other questions? Alvan, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, no, I was just doing a lot of reflecting on the scales there, and I some of the things that I do kind of struggle with in a way, and I just started recently listening to an audiobook about Stoicism, and just trying to allow myself to accept things for what they are, understand that I cannot control those things. And so looking at this slide, it kind of made me think about where I am currently and where I'm striving to be.
Wow. And I appreciate you saying that, as it sounds to me with the friendly voice. I'm not hearing you be judgmental or critical of yourself. I'm trying to accept where I am. Then I'm trying to accept where I am. And that to me is nothing. I don't take that, as a given. So our ability to reflect, but to reflect with that friendly voice and listen to what we're already generating. That I encourage you guys with me or with each other, what do you do? How do you maintain that balance? There's audio books, and there's that awareness of gratitude, and there's that awareness of triggers. I think if we just take a moment and reflect like we are right now, there are certain patterns at this stage of what we're going through that we can identify and build a plan to address them just a little bit better. Can we go to the next slide, please? And I've got my eye on the clock. I know we have about 10, 15 minutes. So I ask you to think about step 2, specific situations, we're already getting to them, that are challenging to you in terms of stressors, challenging, affect your morale, opportunities. And so maybe, just maybe as a plan, step 3, we just work a little bit on that positive attitude. There are two sides to every coin. And please, I hope I'm communicating. I don't mean this in any kind of Pollyannish way. I'm not saying that we make things up, but I do believe it's a skill that we can get better at in terms of seeing the cup half full rather than half empty, and reaching out to others for help. Do you see opportunity here? What am I missing? As Carla said, if you see me doing this, like, bring it to my attention. So again, everyone will get this PowerPoint, but maybe one of our takeaways is just to be a little more mindful, and not in a judgmental way, because we've been through so much in the last 20 minutes, maybe, 20 months, maybe I'm getting tarnished towards things. And I remember I was working once in a community agency, and I was new, working as a psychologist there. And I went into my supervisor, we could try this, we could try that. And the supervisor said, nah, we've tried this, no, we've tried that. Not gonna help, not gonna work. Well, 3 years later, I was now the supervisor. And I had someone who could have been just like any of us, someone in a park and rec program, say to me, I'm the supervisor now, we could try this, we could try that. And I'm starting to say, nah, we can't do that. We tried that already. I had become that other supervisor because I started to see things half empty. I need you, colleague, friend, teammate, to bring that to my attention. Energy is contagious. Positive energy is contagious and negative energy is contagious. But maybe one of our takeaways from this is just about our attitude. Maybe it's about just being in the moment. Maybe Chanel had mentioned something about being in the moment, in focus and in attention. And rather than me just talking to you about that, how to do that, if you'll play with me, I'm going to just do a 1 or 2 minute exercise with you and see. This is about concentration and focus and being in the moment and letting go of mistakes and just controlling what we can, dealing with frustration. So let's see whether on Zoom this can work, whether you can see me or not. I'm going to give you 6 or 7 different commands. I'm going to ask you to see something, feel something, do something. And I want to see if you're able to shift your attention and shift your concentration and focus to what I am asking you to do. And then you let me know whether this has any applicability. I want this to have some meat and potatoes for you in terms of your work. Okay. Choose to look me in the eye. Choose to sit up straight. Choose to be aware of any sounds coming from other parts of the room or outside the room. Choose to be aware of your right foot, wherever it rests, wherever it lies. Choose to shift your attention to your left foot, wherever it rests, wherever it lies. Choose to look me in the eye. Choose to be aware of sounds coming from outside the room. Choose to be aware of your right foot. Choose to be aware of your left foot. Choose to sit up straight. Choose to look me in the eye. At ease, as they would say in the Army. Were you able to hang in there with me? What word was I using more than any other word? Choose to. Because when you're choosing to look me in the eye, you're not aware of the sounds coming from outside. When you're choosing to pay attention to the sounds of the ventilation system or outside the room, you're not aware of the feeling in your right foot. You're so overworked. I know that. There's so many different directions that you're pulled. But I really do believe that most of us can improve our focus and concentration 3 to 5% if we're coming out of a place of choice. Choose to bear down. Choose to lighten up. Choose to let go of that mistake. Choose to ask for help. Choose to advocate for myself. Choose to say no. Choose to say, that behavior is unacceptable. Like, the more we can come out of a place of choice, I would suggest 3 or 5%. It helps us feel more in control. And in this changing world we're in, return to work, activity. There's so much out there we can't control. We always want to maximize what we can control. Does that make sense? And in this field where we're so conscientious, and I love that about us, package deal, every trade's a package deal. Whereas the word choose to helps us focus in the moment, move on, let go of a mistake. Many of us operate out of the word should. I should have done that. She should have done that. They should have done that. Should. Usually leads to 2 feelings or thoughts, both of which are not helpful for self-confidence, being in the moment, positive attitude, self-criticalness. I should have done this. and I didn't, negative self-talk. I'm this, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. Or my word, not your word, guilt. I'm letting myself down. I'm letting my county down. I'm letting my family down. So for those of us that are just continuing to grapple with some frustration, anger, anxiety, stress, 9 out of 10 times is usually some should connected to it. Maybe your takeaway from this meeting is, let's take a step back. What shoulds operating? Let me substitute the word choose to, see if it makes any difference. And if I were to talk to you a week from now and you say to me, Joel, 1 out of 10 times this week, I was just getting really frustrated, angry, down on myself, but I took a step back. I substituted the word should to, and you know what? It lifted some weight off my shoulders. Allow me to focus. Allow me to feel better about myself. I say, good, it helped you 1 out of 10 times this week. Maybe it'll help you 2 out of 10 times next week. That's just the way these mental skills work, little by little by little. Make sense? Lots of things we can do, I suggest. No magic to it. You know that. But we're just trying to tweak the formula a little bit. Can we go to the next slide? And I know I need to start winding down, and I'll stay on after one if people have some questions. Something you might want to take to your colleagues, like how can they can help you out. Question number 2 is a good question for us to pair up with somebody, do at a staff meeting, and you'll be surprised what you learn about that. Next slide, please. Difficult conversations, and just a couple of other things for a game plan. If we can move ahead, Sarah, so I've got my eye on the clock here. We've done a lot of this already. I'm hoping during this presentation we've normalized. Welcome to the club. Who wouldn't be feeling? We're not machines, we're not robots. Stress isn't the enemy. Anxiety is not the enemy. It's just learning to develop a plan. Win the day, win the day. Like, what's our goal? When we wake up in the morning today, what can I do to be a better person? Okay, be a better worker, be a better relationship person. Like, let's set short-term goals. We can maximize those. The what ifs, positive self-talk. One day at a time. Yeah, but what if? I'll cross that bridge. What if? Same things to ourselves as we would to someone else. Next slide, please. Resistance. It's just hard. It's hard to change. Let's try to be more understanding of ourselves. I'm not excusing anybody's behavior. Understanding of other people. What might be 3 reasons why that person's acting the way they are? And do I need to have that conversation? We've talked about this before 2 or 3 times. I'm not seeing a change in behavior. I need to see a change in behavior. Honor your service. You don't need me to tell you what the work you do is so important to families like mine, to people like myself. But we need to remind ourselves, because we don't always get that positive reinforcement from our communities, from our colleagues. We should be saying thank you to somebody every day. And I'm not expecting that person to give you a big hug, but I don't care if you're Michael Jordan or anybody else, positive reinforcement increases the chances we're going to keep acting a certain way. So is there someone we need to say thank you to? I appreciate that. Little thing or big thing. And finally, that mindset. We may not have all the answers, but we'll find a way. We'll figure it out. Let me just ask you to move ahead a couple of slides. And I haven't shown this too many times. Another one, please. One more if you can. About a mindset. For those of you that are sports fans, that's Kobe Bryant, the professional basketball player on the right. I'm the guy on the left. Okay. Kobe Bryant went to my high school in Philadelphia, Lower Merion High School. I've only shown this twice since he passed away about a year ago. And I had a chance, 2 minutes, to ask Kobe Bryant a question, because some of you may recall the last game he played in every city, they had like a farewell to him. And so this was his last game in Philadelphia, one of his last games, period. 2 minutes to ask him a question. What would you ask Kobe Bryant if you had 2 minutes? I found myself asking him, like, what have you learned about mental toughness, developing a thicker skin? Because we're trying to talk about some strategies, techniques. Some of us just, as part of the game plan, need to develop a thicker skin. And like this, he said, I'm not exaggerating, in part of the story. Joel, he said, when I came into the league 20 years ago, I thought mental toughness was if somebody talked trash to me, I talked trash to them. If somebody was physical with me, I was physical with them. I'm still a work in progress, he said. But 20 years later, to me, mental toughness is learning how to control our emotions rather than our emotions controlling us. And then with passion, he said, because in 1 hour, you know the way Philadelphia fans are, He said, there are going to be people 20,000 fans, this was pre-COVID, yelling at me, saying really personal things, taunting me about my mother, father, sister, brother. And then he said with passion, this is a message I want to end with. Nobody, he said, nobody can get in my gut and force my blood pressure to go. Nobody. Nobody can get in my head and force me to think negative. I have control over that. I'm still a work in progress, but at the end of the day, that's what I'm still working on. And in my honest, authentic way, I hope I'm expressing to you, I'm not minimizing any of the stress, anxiety, challenges that any of us have as we return to work, as we return to play, as we return to activity, but as a mindset. Nobody can get in our guts. Nobody can get in our heads. And as part of teams, we may not have all the answers, but we're going to find a way. We're going to figure it out. That's our identity. That's who we are. That's what we do. And if we can just reinforce that mindset a little more, if we can learn how to control that gut and that mindset, I think we can embrace the unknown, maybe be excited about what's coming down the road the next 3, 6, 12 months. Find a check and balance to some of that frustration and anger that it's inevitable. Get outside our comfort zones a little bit. Learn what a mountain issue is and what a molehill issue is, and maintain our eyes on the objectives, the goals, the visions of offering quality services to people in the community, all those things that brought you into this profession to begin with. So my last wish for you, and I know some of you may need to get off, is good luck in continuing to develop a plan to handle your emotions better. Good luck in creating positive memories for yourself, and honor your service, because good luck in creating positive memories for all the different people in your communities, no matter what your role is, that brings you to the Zoom today. Thank you very much, everybody.
Wow. Wow. Let's all give Dr. Joel, MRPA, hand clap, use the emojis if you want to. That was awesome. And also thank you everyone in the audience for attending. I got a lot out of it. I'm sure you did too as well. We'll be having a session evaluation coming out shortly, and we'd like everyone to take the time to fill it out in its entirety. That kind of lets everybody know how much you received Dr. Joel's message for today. And again, I just want to say thank you, and make sure everyone get a chance to check us out on social media and check out our website, mrpa.org, to sign up for any upcoming trainings or PLCs that we have coming up. And again, I'm gonna do my emoji. Thank you again, Dr. Joel, for today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And there's a question about getting the PowerPoint. Would you, Yvonne, or someone else be able to make sure everybody gets the PowerPoint from today?
Yeah,
And it is my
I will send it out. Dr. Fish, I'll send it out attached to the evaluation.
Thank you, Adrian. It's my
Yep.
interest and responsibility. If there's some things we didn't get to today, my contact info is on the first slide. Please reach out and I'll do my best to get back to you. But I wanted to put that out there as part of my interest, but also, in my opinion, my responsibility when I do a presentation like this. So please take me up on that. And thanks again for your help in organizing it, and to be continued, I hope.
Thank you.